You have probably considered yourself lucky at one point or the other for finding a lucky penny. And with the state of the economy, it is kind of lucky. But that's nothing compared to the lucky people who survived the impossible. Let's start with number 6, Ludger Sullivan. As ironic as it sounds, the encounter that earned Ludger Sullivan a spot on this list started out with him getting arrested. Sullivan was an Afro-Caribbean man who was born on the 1st of June 1874 on Martinique Island. The island is home to Mount Pelée, an active volcano. As an adult, Sullivan worked in Saint-Pierre, Martinique's capital city at the time, as a laborer. When he wasn't working, he likes to spend his time stirring up all kinds of trouble. He did this so often that he became quite popular among local authorities. On the night of May 7th, 1902, Sullivan was out doing what he did best, and so it wasn't long before he got arrested again. To this day, the true nature of the crime that landed him behind bars that night remains a mystery. Because while some sources say he started a bar fight and was arrested for assault, others say he committed cold-blooded murder. Whichever the case, Sullivan's crime was grave enough for him to be thrown into solitary confinement. He was locked up in a bomb-proof cell that was built partially underground. The next morning, on May 8th, 1902, Mount Pelée erupted, killing around 30,000 people. Only a few people survived the disaster, and Sullivan was one of them. It turned out that his cell was the safest place to be in the city, and they say prison isn't safe. Pretty much all of the city's infrastructure was destroyed, but Sullivan was found alive underneath the rubble. Badly burned, but alive. After surviving the impossible, Sullivan made a career out of it. He joined Barnum and Bailey's circus and began to introduce himself as the man who lived through doomsday. You have to admit, this man got aura. Number 5, Tsutomu Yamaguchi. World War II was a crazy time for just about everyone who was alive to witness it. But Tsutomu Yamaguchi may have had the craziest experience of them all. When the war broke out, Yamaguchi was a marine engineer working with Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, and he may have loved his job a little too much. Yamaguchi lived in Nagasaki, but on August 6, 1945, he went on a business trip to Hiroshima. Around 8:15 a.m. that day, the Hiroshima bombing took place, and although it claimed many lives, Yamaguchi made it out alive, sustaining only minor injuries. The following day, on August 7th, Yamaguchi returned to Nagasaki. You're probably thinking this is the part where he stayed home to recuperate. But that's not what happened. On August 9th, barely 3 days after he survived the Hiroshima bombing, Yamaguchi was back at work sharing the details of his experience with just about everyone who cared to listen when the Nagasaki bomb detonated. The Nagasaki bomb, just like the Hiroshima bomb, claimed thousands of lives. But in a shocking turn of events, Yamaguchi survived. He managed to cheat death not once, but twice. In 1957, Yamaguchi was recognized by the Japanese government as a hibakusha, aka explosion-affected person of the Nagasaki bombing. But it took another 52 years for him to be recognized as a survivor of the Hiroshima bombing. Yamaguchi eventually passed away in 2010 when he was 93 years old. Number 4, Roy Sullivan. Roy Cleveland Sullivan was an American park ranger in Shenandoah National Park in Virginia, and he was active between the 1940s and 1970s. In that time, he earned himself the nickname Human Lightning Conductor, so you probably have an idea of where this is going. Throughout his lifetime, Sullivan was said to have been struck by lightning a total of 7 times, and he survived them all. To put that in perspective, the odds of a single individual being struck by lightning in any given year are 1 in 775,000. The first time Sullivan got struck by lightning, he had been hiding from a thunderstorm in a fire lookout tower that didn't have a lightning rod. After the tower got struck a few times, he thought he would be safer outside, but boy was he wrong. On getting outside, Sullivan was met with the same fate he had been avoiding. The strike left him with an injury on his right leg and a hole in his left shoe. The second time Sullivan got struck, he was driving on a mountain road during a thunderstorm. This time, the strike knocked him unconscious, set his hair on fire, and then burned off his eyebrows and eyelashes. Sullivan continued to have these encounters throughout his life, and eventually gained recognition from the Guinness World Records as the person struck by lightning more times than any other human being. Number 3, Robert Evans. In the year 2008, 46-year-old Robert Evans did not have a place to call his own and was forced to live on a campsite. He was down on his luck, but luck shone on him in the most unusual way. On the night of Tuesday, September 23rd, as Evans went about his business, he was struck by a hit-and-run driver. He was quickly rushed to the hospital, where the doctors confirmed that he had sustained only minor injuries. But this was just the beginning. When Wednesday morning came, Evans was discharged. He immediately got on his bike and began the journey to the campsite. On the way, he encountered a train on a bridge, and instead of waiting, he decided to try and beat it. It turns out, Evan was not as smooth as he thought he was, and he ended up getting hit by the train. The impact caused him to fall 10 feet into the water beneath the bridge. The people who witnessed the incident rushed to his rescue and pulled him out of the water. Luckily for Evans, he survived his second brush with death, but on the flip side, he received a ticket for trespassing. The law is the law, I guess. Number 2. Vesna Vulovic. In 1971, when Vesna Vulovic applied to be a flight attendant with JAT Airways, she drank a lot of coffee in order to disguise her low blood pressure and pass the medical examination. What she didn't know was that her condition would later play a huge role in saving her life. On the morning of January 25, 1972, JAT Flight 367, flying from Stockholm to Belgrade, with a few stops on the way, landed in Denmark. Vulovic was not scheduled to be on the flight, but she got mistaken for another flight attendant, also named Vesna. When she discovered the mix-up, she didn't mind much. At about 4:01 p.m., shortly after the flight took off from Copenhagen Airport, a bomb detonated, causing the aircraft to break apart and crash in a Czechoslovak village. Vulovic was strapped in the fuselage by a food trolley, and that's where she remained, until she was found by a villager called Bruno Honk. Bruno Honk happened to be a medic during World War II, and so he had the skills necessary to keep Vulovic alive until the rescuers arrived. Of the 28 people on board, only Vulovic survived, and she didn't get off easy. She suffered extensive injuries and was hospitalized for months. She also had no memory from the hour of the crash until a month after. When the doctors examined the situation, they put together a list of possible factors that helped Vulovic survive. One of them was her low blood pressure that kept her heart from exploding, and another was the location where the fuselage landed. In the aftermath of the accident, Vulovic was recognized by Guinness World Records as the world record holder for surviving the highest fall without a parachute. Considering the fact that she fell 33,330 feet, it's safe to say that the record will not be broken anytime soon. Number 1. Frane Selak. Depending on how you look at it, Frane Selak is either the luckiest man alive or the most unlucky. It's kind of like a glass half full or half empty situation. Frane had an alarming number of near-death experiences throughout his lifetime, and according to him, it all began in January 1962, when he was involved in a train accident. The train crashed into a river, and although 17 passengers drowned, Selak was rescued by an unknown person. About a year later, Selak lived through his second brush with death. This time around, he was on a plane when all of a sudden, he got blown out of a malfunctioning door and landed in a haystack. Moments later, the plane crashed, but Selak was unaffected because, well, he wasn't on it. He was off doing whatever it is a person would do if they fell from the sky and landed in a haystack. Over the next couple of years, Selak survived a bus accident, an exploding car, a fuel pump mishap, getting hit by a bus, and what would have been a head-on collision with a United Nations truck. If you think Selak's experiences are a bit too far-fetched, you just might be onto something. In fact, you should probably take his claims with a pinch of salt, because while he was known to recount his stories with a very strong conviction, they were never independently verified. The one part of Selak's claims about his luck that was verified was the part about him winning the lottery. 2 days after his 73rd birthday, Selak won 900,000 euros in the lottery. He purchased 2 houses and a boat with the money, and 8 years later, he gave away what was left of it to live a frugal life. He was a pretty eccentric man. And that's it for this video. See you in the next one.